All right, welcome back, everyone. We're going to get started. This is Kathleen Murphy. She is here from the Institute
for Public Administration.
That's right, IPA. And she's here from IPA, and she's going to take us through this workshop. First, she's going to give us a background and introduction on what it's all about, and then we're going to do a self-assessment. If you're joining us online, there are under online materials, you can find the assessment on there, and as well as the descriptions of each bird. And then yes. And then we're actually going to have some group discussions about it for those online attendees. Feel free to use chat to have those group discussions. And yeah, and then she'll revisit and kind of take us through what we can do with it. All right, so Kathy, you can take it away.
Great. Thank you, Ginny.
Yep.
So it's a pleasure to be here with all of you, and just want to say hello to the folks that are in this room and the folks who are in Germany and the folks who are in Greece. Thank you for inviting me. I'm here today to talk a little bit about collaboration and collaboration in academia. And as Ginny mentioned, I work at the University of Delaware. I'm in the Institute for Public Administration. Our center is part of the School of Public Policy and Public Administration. And we have something I think that's pretty unique within the university and at University of Delaware, as well as other universities. We are made up of primarily professional staff, and we work in conjunction with faculty members in the School of Public Policy and Administration. Our role is to primarily conduct the service part of our mission, and that is to go out and do work in the state of Delaware and to assist state and local governments, nonprofit organizations, and education institutions in the area of developing public policy, conducting research, looking into best practices, but most importantly, getting that information out to the folks that need it, and then implementing the recommendations that come from the research and helping them to plan to institute whatever changes and new ideas come out of that research that we conduct. We also mentor and supervise graduate students who work with us 20 hours a week so that they have an opportunity to get real world work experience as they are getting their master's degree. We have some doctoral students too. And so as a professional staff person, I'm interacting every day with students and taking them out into the field to do the work that we do. So we have some collaboration here, and it's interesting and it's challenging. But at the end of the day, we feel that it's pretty worthwhile, both internally for our center and our school, as well as the work that we do throughout the state. So let me jump into now a little bit about collaboration. And what do I mean by collaboration? I have a background in dispute resolution. I'm a mediator, I'm a facilitator, and I'm a trainer, and I'm an instructor here at the university. So I see collaboration very often through the lens of conflict and managing conflict. So when I talk about it, think about collaboration as one way of interacting with others. It's a choice. Ideally, it's a choice because it works better when it's done voluntarily than when it's mandated. Very often when it's mandated, it doesn't actually come to fruition or really look like a true collaboration. If it's not done with the right intention, with people who understand what it is and that they're doing it willingly. So when we talk about collaboration, we're talking about engaging others equally, that we talk with them about our goals and our ideas. We listen to theirs. We expect that there will be conflict and that there will be differences of opinion. We expect that. But our goal is, it's more important for us to work together than to just achieve individual goals. And that's sort of the mindset we have to go into our work with. And also what we encourage our partners, other organizations to do with us, so that whatever we develop is something very unique. It's not something that maybe our institution thought, would happen, or maybe that the client thought would happen, but something totally unique but that satisfies everyone that's involved. We also try to be inclusive, not just of us and whoever the client is, but all people we call stakeholders, people who are impacted by the work. So for example, we recently did a strategic planning process for a city here in Delaware. And we started, of course, with the town manager and the council, but immediately moved on to the employees, the citizens, the businesses, the schools, the churches, anybody and everybody who is a part of that community. And so we sort of taught the city how to collaborate with others and sort of laid out the process, because even for a place like the city of Milford where this was done and they wanted to do it, they don't always know how to do it. So we were able to help them to understand how collaboration works. And yes, it does take time and a little bit of a different mindset, but that it doesn't mean that you have to lose anything. So that's just one example. Let me just now get into collaboration in the context of higher education. I read some of the barriers that all of you created around collaboration yesterday through an exercise that you did. And I think anybody who works in a higher education institute would come up with that list. So nothing was too surprising there. It is very interesting. You know, a lot of universities, you're going to see on their websites, it's all about collaboration. You know, we use these key words, but then when you really look behind the curtain and you get, you know, inside, like, is it happening? Where is it happening? How does it happen? Well, again, academia, it's no different than any other organization. Everybody's busy. Everybody has different goals. People are under pressure to get work done, to do it quickly, to accomplish tasks. And so, you know, the process, the collaboration part is usually the first thing to go. And even for folks that I work with who we sort of are always helping other people do that, we do the same thing. We have to like let it go sometimes because we don't have the time. So when we think about collaboration in academia, again, there's always going to be pockets, okay? So I would just encourage everybody, don't get frustrated by the system that you're working within and maybe the people surrounding you. If you are inclined to be someone who wants to collaborate and sees the value in that, you know, you'll find opportunities to do that. And it can be in a classroom project as a student. It can be in the workplace. You can be surrounded by a department and leaders that don't necessarily do this, but you can work with others and utilize a process like that. So I would encourage you, if you've done that, to continue practicing it. Also to kind of be a voice for you know, the success, and to talk about this and telling others the value about it, because that's another thing that sort of happens. You know, you get something done. By the time you get it done, you're so weary, you just kind of move on. We don't talk about what happened. We don't do too much reflection. So incorporating that into the work you're doing and talking about it. If you haven't tried it, if you're not, you know, haven't been inclined or had too many opportunities, it really is something that I would say the sooner you do it, probably the better. So try it. Look for opportunities to do it, see how it goes, because you'll begin to recognize the value of different voices and creating something that not just one person came up with, or doing things the way we always did them. But the value of getting to know other people personally as well as professionally, and learning from them, and being able to make something that's going to be better than something you would have done individually. Okay. You also, I'm sure, have experienced, particularly as students, where you're in a classroom and you have instructors who are putting you in groups or teams to work together. So this is usually where it sort of starts. And I'm going to guess that there's not usually too much instruction on how to do that, like, or what happens when it doesn't work, what happens when somebody doesn't show up, or you don't get along, or people aren't pulling their weight. We don't usually talk too much about that. We don't get a lot of input. But But yet we're asked to do this. And sometimes we're asked to do it by people who wouldn't really have the answers or really know how to do it themselves. So I think that when you are experiencing that, to first of all think about the difference between a group and a team. And a group is people that just come together that have to be working sort of side by side or on something, but they do not necessarily have the same goals. So people in different departments, you can be in a department. I'm a professional staff person. I might work with a faculty person and a student and an administrative assistant. And every day we come in with different goals, or we can operate as a group. Sometimes though, when we need to, because we have to work towards the same goals, and we see the value in that, we need to start functioning more like a team. So the difference is when you're on a team, one, that should be stated. People should understand that. So I say that because if you think you're on a team, but no one's ever called it a team, you're probably not on a team. If no one ever said out loud, we're a team, and this is what it means to be a team. Okay. But if you are in a group and you want to make it a team, how do you do that? By talking about it. What does it mean? How are we going to work together? Asking these questions, saying them out loud. It's sort of, and I would venture to say that most people have the same ideas in mind. So imagine when you get into a group with students and you're going to work on a project, everybody's sort of thinking about what's going to go wrong and why they don't want to do this. But if you start to say, so let's talk about this. What are your expectations? This is really the questions. What are your expectations for how we're going to work together? Let's talk about the goals. Let's talk about the task. Let's talk about whose responsibility. And it's really saying out loud all the things that we think everybody's supposed to know, but we don't. And we don't because we make assumptions. We're all making assumptions that this is how it would work, or this is what we should do. And that's around timing and participation and outcomes and grades and a lot of things. So start to ask, just to say, invite the conversation, begin the conversation, and then involve other people, and not just the people who are ready to jump in, but the people who are quiet. So pull them into the conversation, asking those questions. So again, I just put that out there because teams are more apt to collaborate. They can have conversations about that. And groups, it's going to be much more difficult to do that. And then I'm just going to say one other thing about collaboration. And collaboration is great. We all know that. Why do we know it? Because every university uses the word, so it must be great. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have to, I don't think you have to collaborate all the time on everything, because collaboration takes time, takes a lot of work, takes a lot of energy. So I think you have to pick and choose. When does it really matter? So this conference is a great example of, if you're going to do an international conference for the first time, you probably should collaborate with the other universities rather than just saying, we're going to do it this way. Okay. So it's a great, that's a great example. But if there are other things that you're working on that make more sense for you to do them alone, or, working with somebody else where you compromise and you sometimes give up things that you don't need to spend a lot of time engaged in communication and working through things, then use different styles and different approaches. But, understand, the pros and cons of collaboration and choose it, when it makes most sense to you. And I think, how do you do that with your partners? Sort of say it out loud, just asking the question. So I'm going to stop there for a second, see if there's any questions. Nope. We're good. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let me just talk now a little bit about the workshop. Birds of different feathers. Birds of different feathers. This exercise that we're going to base this on is a very informal, non-scientific. I thought, okay, a bunch of doctoral students, we're in academia. Let's just use something that's really light and fluffy and fun, because maybe this is the first time everybody's done something light and fluffy and fun. So it's going to be like mandated. Okay. So this is seriously by no means, are you wedded to anything? Do not get too caught up in the names of these birds or the meanings or anything else. As a matter of fact, you can change the name if you want. It doesn't matter. The point of this exercise is really to help to give you just a few minutes, and there's an assessment, and you're going to move through this assessment. It doesn't take very long, but just a way to sort of set the stage to help you to reflect on yourself and your preferences when you're working with others. And then it just gives you some idea of, you know, again, your preferences. What do you like? What are your strengths? What don't you like? You know, what works for you? So let me also say, there's no right or wrong. There's no right bird or style or wrong bird or style. Again, it's just to help us begin and have a conversation. Once you walk through that exercise, we're going to take that information and begin a conversation to talk about what does each style bring to the table? What are the pros and cons of each style? And by pros and cons, I just mean that sometimes it's just in the perception that others have of that particular style. If they're not that style, they have a perception of whatever you're doing and what does it mean, because that's what we do. We make assumptions about people based on how they're behaving. So it's really to help us jump into that kind of conversation. And I'm going to encourage you that when you are taking this very short assessment, that you think about yourself in one particular situation. So it could be as a student when you were on a particular team or group doing a project, or you can think about yourself where you, if you're working, where you currently work, and people that you interact with. And I say that because you probably behave differently with different groups, and you might behave differently when you're in personal situations versus professional. So what does that mean? I'm just saying, to make it easier on yourself, just think of one and answer it that way. If you wanted to recognize all of the different styles that you use, you could take this over and over again and thinking about those different situations. And probably ideally, you would be able to say, I use different styles in different situations, so that you jump around. Because if you can do that, that's actually a strength. But some of you are not going to be like that, where you're going to have one or two that you're really dominant in, and the others really challenge you. Okay, so that's all I'm going to suggest when you take this. Again, don't get too worried about how you're answering it or the style. It's just really to begin a conversation, because after you do the assessment and you score and you figure out your preference, which bird is your dominant, and you might have one or two style, then I'm going to ask you to read through the information that you have, because it then explains a little bit more in depth about the birds, so that you have an idea about the one or two that are your dominant, but also the others. So you'll take it, you'll score it, you'll read through the information. After that, I will ask you all to move into some groups, ideally, depending on how many people are in the room with you. If you can move with others who have the same style as you, that would be great, because then we will put up some prompts, and we're going to have you discuss this amongst yourselves. After we do that, we're going to, I'm going to ask you to report out. So I'm going to share the prompts in a minute, but I'm going to ask you to report out what you learned about your style, and so that for the larger group. And so we're going to do this in all 3 locations, and we're going to gather that information so that you all have it and share that with everybody. So I want to give you a heads up that you'll be, one, just discussing some things in the small group, but that there are just other things that you'll be reporting out and sharing with others. We're going to have a break and about 12 o'clock, and then we'll resume and continue the conversation with the other groups. So at this point, we're going to be distributing the assessment and the information about the birds. And we're going to give you some time to review that information, test, take it, score, and review.
And for those of you joining us online, the information that we're passing around right now is available at our website under session, what's it called? Session materials. Thanks. All right. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Hello and welcome back. I hope you were able to complete the assessment, score yourself, identify one or two prominent birds or styles that represent you, and took some time to read through what each bird strengths are and how we describe each bird. The next part of this is I'm going to ask you all to go into small groups. But before we do that, I want to explain the exercise, and also we're going to demonstrate what we're asking you to do. So I'm going to ask you to move into like groups. So doves get together, owls get together, so on and so forth. And with people who have the same dominant style, one or two, doesn't matter. If you have two, you can pick which one, so that you can get in a group and have somebody to talk to. But get with somebody who has the same style. And then once you're in the group, we're going to ask you, first of all, to just share your thoughts about the assessment tool, what it felt like to take that. Does it accurately represent you? You know, do you feel like you fit into one of those categories or not? Secondly, to discuss then the pros and cons or advantages and disadvantages of the style, that particular bird, that style. And that's really just for your group to have a conversation about. The last thing I'm going to ask you to do is to identify a couple of things. And the reason for this is that you will then be asked to share this with everybody. And those things are, I would like you to share with everybody 1 to 3 interesting things you want other birds to know about your bird. Okay. 1 to 3 ways your bird can increase your effectiveness with others, so with different birds. And 1 to 3 ways other birds can improve relationships with you. So those are the 3 things that we'll ask you then to share. And when we get to that point, when we do the sharing, I'm going to ask each group to report out. So we'll pick one. Say maybe we start with doves, and we're going to hear from all the doves. And then I'm going to give people who are not in that group an opportunity to also to chime in. Okay. So are we ready, ladies? Sure. To demonstrate this? So we're going to start with, what were your thoughts about the assessment?
I thought it was funny. We were chuckling the whole time because I'm very dominantly a hawk and a peacock pretty closely together, because I do have a very task-oriented mind, but I'm also very creative. So those kind of 2 things shared a lot. So I'm just like 4, 4, 4, 4 going down the list. And then I was also a little frustrated at some of the boxes because they seemed like some of the words were not actually synonyms to me, or not, didn't seem like they belonged in the right box. Like dependable and empathetic and concerned are in the same box. But to me, I'm very dependable, but I know I need to work on my empathy. So I was kind of not sure what to put in that box. So I went with a 2 because it was kind of half and half.
Okay.
So, but I like this assessment. It was fun.
Yeah, so piggybacking off of what Corey just said about the dependable, empathic, and concerned box, while I completely agree, as far as she and I goes, that doesn't really fit. But then I thought about our third partner, Kathleen. She yeah, there we go. Yeah. So, we were a trio in this planning committee on the state side. And when I see that box and I think about Kathleen, it's the perfect description, because, sorry, 1 second, it's just going to turn off if I don't do this. Okay. When I think about Kathleen, it's the perfect description because she is dependable, but she's also very concerned and very empathic. And so when Corey and I, because I was a lot of hawk too, I had 27 peacock and then 20 dove and 20 hawk. But I think sometimes the hawk outweighs the dove, as far as our conversations go, especially when interacting with another hawk in that way. So Corey and I, at times throughout our working relationship, would kind of come to blows. And like during our reflective session, midway through this planning process, we came up with ways like, okay, when you say this to me in this tone, it like all I see is red. And I recognize that in myself, and I have to come down from that. So I'm not hearing what you're saying. I'm just coming down from it. So I'm spending my time in that way. So if I don't hear what you have said, that's why. So then we figured out like, that's not an efficient use of time. So maybe we can find a way, like a different way to say things. And I did things too that were like triggering or whatever word you want to use for her as well. So it was really about, and Kathleen was very good at saying like, I think what she's trying to say here, or I see your perspective here. So, you know, it's definitely like, I think she was almost this illuminating aspect of both of our personalities and how, you know, how we differed, how we were similar. Because yeah, like Peacock, the first time I took this, I was like, what? No, that's not who I'm not a peacock. Like, but I am. When I read through it, like big picture thinker, like not really detail oriented, speaks fast. Yeah. Uses their hands. Yep, all of those pieces. So it's just accurate. And like when she said, use non-judgment, don't get tied up in the bird itself, but just pay attention to the description and use it as a tool in your toolbox. And it has been really helpful for me.
Good.
So
that's exactly what I was hoping for, is that you sort of gain a better understanding of yourself and you can figure out what works and what doesn't. So let me go on to the second prompt. So the three of us scored high on Peacock. So we're going to focus on Peacock. So the next piece that we would do now is to discuss the pros and cons of being a Peacock.
Okay. One of the Peacock's traits is that they are creative. So a lot of times in academia, we don't have a lot of opportunity to be creative, right? It's very straightforward work. Here's what's expected. Here's what you have to deliver. And you lock yourself in a room for, 12 hours straight while you're doing it. And so that's, for me, is really hard. So when I am in, a collaborative experience or in any experience really where we have to produce a product or something, I really enjoy when there's a creative angle to it or other things, because that's what I don't mind staying up all night to do. The other stuff feels like a chore sometimes, but the creative stuff I love. So.
Okay.
So some pros and cons is what you said.
Yes, so some pros and cons. And so some cons are that it takes time and effort and willing partners to collaborate, and everybody sort of being on the same page about the same goal and wanting to spend that time and energy doing that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that because I'm similar, I do have a creative side, and I like to spend more time in thinking about, maybe entrepreneurial things or how to coming up with a big idea and then going after it. And much of academia is not about that.
Right.
Much
of visionary.
Yeah, exactly. So much of it's going, refining, and then focusing on that in the long term, like over the long haul. And that really makes me uncomfortable. And so I think sometimes a lot of my strengths are not necessarily emphasized, or I don't want to say appreciated, because I don't think that that's the right word, but not necessarily emphasized or focused on in an academic context. So I can find that, like, that's for me is frustrating sometimes to be a peacock in academia, but it's also very self-centered perspective. But yeah, so that's a con, I guess.
Okay. So let's jump to the next piece, which is what we would ask. So this is just a conversation really for you to have in your small group, right? So next we're going to move forward in thinking about, we want you to come up with some points that you would be willing to share with the large group. And so first of all, we're looking at 1 to 3 things that are interesting about peacocks that we would want the other birds to know about us.
Okay.
Which,
is that what we want to share now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Like so again, we would be discussing this and then later sharing it, but we should come up with, what would the things be that we would want other birds to know?
Okay. That I need to be like somehow stimulated, challenged, interested in the work. Otherwise, it really is hard to get through it, and it's a real chore and task. So whatever the group can do to kind of help make it seem like worthwhile work, that really helps me get through something.
Okay, and I would also say, because when I read about peacocks, is that agree with that, and then that we like new things, and we get excited, so we'll talk a lot, but we just need somebody to tell us to stop.
Yeah. Because I like a con about peacocks themselves, or for me as a peacock, because I don't want to speak for other peacocks, but is I do not gravitate towards detail-oriented tasks. Like these two would do the schedule, and I was just pained by it. I'm like, I don't. Please, I trust you. Like, please don't make me do that, because but what we were at odds about for a while was like, I didn't even care about the schedule. My care was like, we need the keynotes, and they were like, we need a schedule to know when the keynotes are going to start, because without that, then we can't do this. And in my head, I was like, without the keynotes, we can't do the schedule. So I finally was like, you know what? I'm going to go with like the 2 against 1, and that's real. Like, you know how it's like, if you have all bad roommates, the roommate is you. Like, you do not have the majority vote here, and you just need to deal with it, and you can get the keynotes after the schedule's done. And that worked super, because it like they both were like, yes, like the schedule's done, things are so much better now. I was like, okay, all right, it is better now, because both of you are really happy, and I didn't know like, that was so, so like perspective taking, I think, is not necessary. Like, I think it's a Dove strength, maybe like a default Dove, and that's something I have to actively work on. Mm-hmm. So the majority votes thing, I feel like, has been a natural thing that's emerged from our team, and it works for me because I trust them too. So I think it's easy to say that, and it may not be something that can be generalized, because if you don't trust the people, then 2 against 1 can feel like 2 against 1 versus like, nope, I respect you guys and I trust you, and so we're going to do that.
So that sort of leads into the next one, which is what are some ways that we peacocks can increase our effectiveness with others? And you sort of highlight it, recognizing, we should recognize our own strengths, but also weaknesses, and then rely on others and trust their judgment, and to figure out, like you said, like which does come first, like speaker, schedule, right, and then you trusted them. So what are is there something else that peacocks can do to increase their effectiveness with others?
I think because peacocks can kind of get carried away with their visions and dreams, and because they're talkative, kind of just keep tabs on how much of the conversation you're dominating, how much time you're taking. Is this really an effective use of the conversation or not? And
And how about some ways that other birds can improve their relationships with peacocks?
I don't know if this is a peacock thing, but when I feel heard, then I am way more, it's way easier for me to do pretty much everything in that group setting. So I don't know if that's necessarily a peacock thing, but that could be kind of like about the, I don't know, the attention or like the feeling.
Yeah, no, that's a good in general.
Those are the parts of the peacock that I don't like, but I think it's still true.
No, but in general, and I think that's one thing that Kathleen in our group is really good at doing.
Oh yeah.
Because she would kind of like stop people and say, okay, so what you're saying is we should do this, this, and this. And it also helps promote understanding and communication, and it's a really good skill. So make sure you have somebody in your group that can do that and rein those peacocks in.
Because it also models the behavior and serves as a prompt for us to be like, oh, right, I need to check in. I need to do this.
Right.
I need, because for me, it has to be concrete in order to
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you both.
Yeah, sure.
So that was just a little demonstration of what we're going to ask all of you to do in your small groups. And at this point, we're going to give you a chance. It's about 11:31, right? We're going to give you some time to get with other birds like you. And I guess we'll go like 15 minutes maybe about, and have those discussions, come up with some points that you're willing to share with others. And we will be checking in with the folks that are in this room, as well as our counterparts, Greece and Germany, and asking for some feedback, okay? Are there any questions?
If you have any questions, just make sure to type them in the chat and we will respond in the chat. See you in about 15 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for discussing your bird style with others in your group. At this point, we're going to move on and we're going to ask you to report out to everybody else. And we're going to begin here at the University of Delaware. We have two folks who are in the OWL group and they're going to report out. And then we're going to ask our friends in Greece and Germany to contribute to the conversation about owls. So right now we're starting with owls. And actually I'll do this. Take this so we can see. We're focusing on owls. Okay. And I can walk you to, but you see this if you just want to start with, you know, the interesting things that you want other birds to know about owls.
So one of the interesting things we talked about was that we don't really like small talk. Just kind of like get to the point.
Yeah, it's very true. And the other one is that we sort of have an obsession with high quality work, which can be detrimental in some instances, but for us, it's making sure that the work is of top quality.
Okay. How about ways that owls can increase their effectiveness with others?
We are very detail oriented, and being so detail oriented can trip us up or maybe slow down things. So for us, one of the things that we can do is to try to think about the big picture a little bit more and not get too caught up in all the details.
Mm-hmm. And also like perfection. I know especially that's a big one for me, trying to think about, okay, sometimes it's never going to be perfect and you just have to kind of get things done.
Thank you. And ways that other birds can improve their relationships with owls.
Yeah, so for me, I think one of the big ones is telling us exactly what you want us to do and by when. That's a big one for me because then I can kind of just make a list and say, okay, I know that I've done everything that I need to do, you know, and that I have it done in time.
And then another one for us is that we respond well when given the opportunity to express our own professional judgment. So it's easier, it's a little bit contradictory to what Danny just said about just telling us what to do and have us do it, because I'm on the other end of that where I just need you to trust my judgment and that I can do it. So just give me what you need me to do and just trust that I'll do it independently and that I'll take care of it.
Thank you both so much. Now, we want to hear from Greece. Yes, thank you.
Maybe you guys can stay up because maybe you'll have things to say.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So do we have our OWL group in Greece ready to report out?
Yeah, we're ready.
Hi.
Hi from Greece. Why?
Probably just have to mute. Just have to make sure you mute all the devices in the room. Except for yours. Except yours.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Our group consists of 5 owls. As far as the first question is concerned, we also chose high quality work as we like accuracy and perfection, and pay a lot of attention to details, and we want everything to be perfect in the end. Furthermore, we consider ourselves very organizing and maybe a little bit directional sometimes, in order to get the best results of everyone. And thirdly, we have a good sense of anger or anxiety management. So we can resolve any unpleasant situations during our collaborations. The second question, how else can increase effectiveness? Well, since we are very organizing, we like to attract and get a lot of responsibilities. However, we choose to stay in the background and not be the center of attention. So I think that this is a quality that can makes us collaborate better with hawks and peacocks. Finally, yes, we can be very flexible. So we can resolve any problems as they occur. As far as improving relationships with us, the qualities that we seek in other people is our honesty and politeness. We can't cooperate with people, we can't have easy and effective relationships. And we also want them to be responsible and trustworthy, so we can be sure that they can give us the expected results. We want everything to be perfect in the end. That's all from the house.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Great, thank you so much. That was a great list. And we don't have any owls that will be chiming in from Germany. So I'm just going to open it up now and ask for folks who are not owls. Was there anything that surprised you about owls and what they said about themselves? Because you may be thinking of other owls that you know and work with. So any surprises or any questions about for owls?
I have one. Oh, sorry. You said flexible, which I think sometimes, like both of these owls are flexible, but some owls I know, I feel like are not always flexible. Sometimes rigid comes to mind, with some owls, but that's all.
So they might appear,
Right.
they might appear that way.
Right. And it could be a continuum, right?
Yes.
So like my definition of flexible is different from maybe like an owl's definition of flexible. I don't know. I just wanted to contribute.
Okay, great, thank you. Anybody else? Anybody from Greece? Did anybody want to chime in and have any points that you'd like to make if you're not an owl?
No further questions. Any? No. Not from other groups.
Great, thank you then. So
Thank
we'll
you very
move on.
Good
We'll
job.
move on to the next one.
That was great.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you both for coming up. Let's see, do we want to do Doug?
You want to come?
Okay.
Please, great job.
See, it's not, I know you're so good. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Doves. Welcome, Doves. And would you both like to say your name? I should have had the other group, but go ahead, introduce yourself. And then if you would just move through those prompts and tell us which ones you're answering. Thank
Sounds
you.
good. So I'm Dee.
And I'm Kathleen McAlpes, and I'm also on the planning committee. So, do you want to start?
Okay, and when I say the final score and I got the highest in Dove, and I look at some of the descriptions of Dove, I feel like I identify a lot with that. I value, well, in group work, I value a lot of others' perspective and try to make peace of each other's viewpoints, and try to be cooperative, very caring to each other, very flexible.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes we can be very quiet, but it's not necessarily because we don't have an opinion or something to say, but it's really kind of processing what other people are saying. And sometimes, kind of like we talked about earlier with like Ginny and Corey, sometimes I'd be really quiet, but because I was really taking in, you know, what they were thinking and trying to figure out, you know, what they were saying and what they wanted. And then also, how could we make both of their ideas work? Because I think a big thing about Doves is really being a team player, but also really wanting everyone to get kind of what they want and to see their vision through. So I think that's another really important thing that, you know, I really tried to do, especially in this process, and I think is very big, you know, characteristic of Doves.
Right. So I appreciate once a colleague of mine said, have a comment about me saying that I'm a processor. So she recognized that when I'm not talking in a meeting, I'm not paying attention. I'm processing a lot of opinions, different person's voice, and try to collaborate with those ideas and fit in with my own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of goes right into the next question, which is ways we can increase our effectiveness with others. And one way that Dee and I talked about was speaking out a little bit more about our ideas that we do have, and making sure that even if, you know, we don't have the fullest idea or everything put together, but still letting people know, because our ideas can still be very useful and can still be part of that collaboration. Even if we are trying to be the peacemakers between a couple different ideas, we still have our own that can really, you know, shine through to let other people know that.
So we can contribute more than making peace.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another thing to increase our effectiveness too is to remind even ourselves that we can't always please everyone. So increasing the effectiveness in the sense that, you know, that's something we have to remember. It doesn't always happen. And so using so much emotional energy to try and please people all the time can be very exhausting. So a way to increase our effectiveness would be to really take a second to realize that just can't always happen as much as we want it to. Yes. And then the last one, so ways other birds can improve relationships with doves. Do you have one for that, team?
Okay, so I would like others to recognize, also value my idea when I value theirs. So I would appreciate others to also encourage me to speak out my idea, even though it is immature and I resist to speak out my immature idea. If others encourage, I would. So yeah.
And then one other thing that I thought about too is that going off the fact that we are peacemakers and we really don't like conflict, I think having a safe working environment where we feel like we can share something that does come up and making it feel like we could openly talk about something that's not going to turn into conflict, I think is really important as well. So that we feel like we can share those things that come up. So.
That's good.
Yeah, great.
Great.
Thank you so much. And now I want to open up. Oh, great.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
We are the team DAV. It was very interesting that the girl said. Concerning the interesting facts about our team, we agreed that we want to feel special from others, from the team, because we want to express our thoughts and our opinions. And also another interesting fact is that we want to value, we are caring for others, and we think that this is very important for the team to collaborate with each other. And concerning how we can increase effectiveness, we believe that we have to be more open and to express our ideas and our thoughts, and also to be more comfortable with change, because change is an eternal part of teamwork. And finally, concerning how other teams can improve relationship with us, we think that they have to give us more time, because we don't like to be under pressure, and don't criticize us about our thoughts, because we want to be appreciated and give us the courage to carry on.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you very much.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, how about, we're going to keep moving? Is
For
that right?
Germany, yeah, we're
Anybody from Germany?
Marina, if you're on, do you want to talk about what bird you were, or you could send it via chat and we can relay it for you, just so there's
I don't think
some.
she's on anymore.
Oh,
Okay.
all right. So no.
Okay.
We're gonna proceed.
Okay. So does anybody have any comments, questions? Anything stood out or surprised you about what you heard about the doves that just talked about themselves? Yes.
Do you just want to look up? Sorry.
No, but I will for you.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
I think it was helpful to hear that even though they're quiet, they still need to be given the opportunity to share their ideas. So I think we're so fast paced and meetings happen so quickly, and we're just ready to move on. For me personally, my personality is ready to just move on to the next thing. And I have to slow down and realize that, that my colleagues here need the opportunity to present what they were thinking too, and that it's my responsibility to encourage them to do that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Gotcha, girls.
that was good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And it's so interesting just listening to the pace that you two speak versus say owls and peacocks. We haven't heard from the Hawks yet, but the pace and like the energy level, and also the way you were, when you two were speaking, like you were talking about, I was really picking up, you don't like conflict. You don't like confrontation. You don't want to be put on the spot. You need time. And you even said a safe environment or a safe place. So like, it just made me realize, and so first of all, thank you for coming up, because we kind of we just said, come on. So the owls were like, yeah, we don't really want to do it, but we'll do it. And you guys were like, I really don't want to do it, but you are going, but I'm working on this conference. So I guess I'm coming up. Thank you for coming up, because, but you see like the reluctance, and you said you needed to be invited in. And I was thinking, if we were in a group working on something and you weren't speaking though, how would we invite you in? How do we do that? Like, so I often feel like I have to somehow, not only do I have to slow myself down, but sometimes slow other people down and make space, maybe doing that thing where we go, okay, so we've heard of it from a lot of you in the room. Let's make some time. Let's go. I'm going to give people who haven't said anything a chance to speak maybe, but would that feel like putting you on the spot?
Well, sometimes, but if I prefer to have more time to think, I will speak out. But if I do have an idea, I will take that advantage, take the chance. Yeah.
And I think another thing too about that is, like when I was working with Corey and Ginny for the conference, there were a lot of times where they would be like, ideas. And then they would be like, okay, Kath, like, what do you think? Right? And I'd be like, okay. And I think part of the reason that I went through the process to be like, okay, this is what she's saying, because that's like how I was processing what they had said. So like I took that time to process almost in front of them, but they definitely slowed down and gave me that time. And then we were able to really figure out what everyone was saying and then figure out the best solution from there. So I think they did a great job of like realizing that I needed some time and that in order to kind of go to the next step, we had to slow down for a second and then we could keep going.
Good,
So.
good. Okay, so before you two, I'm going to ask everybody organizing, or should we continue with the next two, or do you need a break?
I think so. Let's just keep going. Yeah.
Let's just keep going.
Do you want
Do
to, or do
we
you guys
want
want
to
to take
check
a break?
with Greece to see?
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, hey. Do you guys want to keep going or do you want to take a break for 10 minutes?
Students in Greece.
Feel free to chat or you can unmute the camera. You gotta
Hey, let's go on.
let's go. All right, we'll keep going. We'll keep going. Perfect.
Gosh, I stole a mail.
Yeah, yay! Welcome.
Okay. How about, should we do hogs?
Yeah.
Τώρα έπρεπε να μιλήσεις. Μας έβαλε επιτέλους στον αέρα.
What bird are they?
Well, let's ask, which one?
So, what bird do you guys have lined up next in Greece?
It's not working for me to unmute it.
Why am I
There you go.
seeing myself?
There we go.
Because you're on the screen.
Because it's not letting me unmute.
We have 2 hawks and we have a peacock.
Wow.
Which one did you
Which one do you want to do next?
hawk?
There we go. All right.
We can start with all of you.
Yeah.
How about if we start with you?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Nice.
Who's a hog?
Please be seated.
Yes, come on. Let the hogs in Greece.
Okay, hello. We're the hosts. Some things about us. We don't really like small talk when we get down to business. We don't like the chit chat. We'd rather prefer not to discuss and going to the results we're going to accomplish. We like to work fast, speak fast. We're getting impatient easily. We hate slow rhythms at our work. We like multitasking several projects at once with a lot of aims. We don't really like working in teams. We prefer solo career. We can work in teams, but we don't really want to. Okay. How to increase our effectiveness with others who are different from us. We don't really patient, so we must be a bit more patient and better listeners to others. Many times we don't take into account others' opinions, and we end up hurting other people's feelings, and they leave from the teams. So it's a problem. We don't really care about their concerns when expressed in teams. There are certain points we have to improve there. And last but not least, how to improve work relationships with hogs. We like to speak to us directly. We like checklists to be organized, to have accomplished lists, to have yet to be done lists. We like to be organized, to organize their work to be done. Oh, my handwriting is awful. We like to handle many projects at once. We like to have authority. We like to be in control in leadership positions. And in a way, when we work in teams, the other team members always get the message and ask for confirmation, seek for approval from us. Yes? Okay, it's done.
Okay, Ginny, you're a hog too,
great.
right?
Yeah, well,
Would you wanna-
I have like
Ish.
a dueling personality.
Oh,
Yeah,
So
so
Laura's way more of a dominant hog. In the sense that we're, I mean, I
Oh,
can do
you
too.
score high on the
well, you can come up or somebody, Go ahead, take that chair and you all can walk.
I'll
through.
stand and you can sit here.
So Ginny, just you do it.
Fine,
She already
I'll
did
do it.
hers. So Ginny and I kind of scored conversely. So I'm a dominant hawk, and then second is peacock, and
Yeah.
Ginny is peacock, and second is hawk. So sometimes
It's a great
we're at
intro.
odds with each other
Yeah.
because we do, you know, depending on what mode we're in,
Yeah.
we either work well together or sometimes we can butt heads on different things because we see better ways of doing things, and our way is the best way, right? So
See, like that was something like better ways. I'm like, what? Why is your way better? So there's a lot of self-recognition.
So I agree with the students in Greece who talked about how we get things done very efficiently. We're very productive. We appreciate timelines and all those kinds of things. And that's very important for other birds to know. We do tend to trample on other people's feelings sometimes because we kind of have our eyes on the prize and see the end goal as the most important thing sometimes. And we forget to that other people are not like that and they need a little more hand-holding or a little more like, you know, just kind of let acknowledgement that they're being heard. So a lot of times I find myself in conversations or in group work where I'm absolutely registering, absolutely hearing what other people are saying, but I don't acknowledge that. And I just kind of move on, or I just absorb that idea and say, yeah, great, let's do this. And I forget to acknowledge that. A lot of times also I tend to cut people off when they're talking because I do feel that people get repetitive. And when I feel that it's the third time someone has said something and I already got it, I cut them off. And to them, that might come as this person is not listening to me, I'm not being heard. But to me, it's like, I already heard you 3 times, you're done, let's move on. Because I want to be productive, and it's not a good use of our time to keep saying things over and over when you've already said it. But I realize that's because that person doesn't feel heard yet. And so as a hawk, I need to work on that in order to increase my effectiveness with others. So taking time to stop and acknowledge and say, okay, so what you're saying is this, great idea, let's keep going and let's build on that.
Because I think that part, what you're saying is this, because for me, I vacillate between feeling unheard and I think also trampling on Kath's ideas. So it's like, you know, so like Kath probably feels like both of us are just not hearing her at all. And I'm in the middle feeling unheard by Corey.
Yeah, and I'm
So
like,
it's
I heard you guys 10 minutes ago, let's keep going.
It's
So
a spectrum of just like,
it's really funny.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to how fast you're digesting the information, how fast you're
and how well you are able to communicate your ideas in a way that makes sense to the people you're talking to. Because I could be talking to someone who thinks like me and they could have gotten me the first time around, you know, but because I'm talking to someone like Corey, it's like, nope, I need to communicate it in a different way. So now she feels like she's hearing it again, but she's still not hearing what I want her to hear. Like she's not hearing my full idea, right? Or it could be, you know.
And when those roles are reversed, I say something once and I expect everybody to understand it and do it. And I get frustrated when I have to say things over and over and over. I already emailed that to you 3 times. Why isn't it done yet? Right?
Yeah. And here's another thing. Like we have like, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy that we're talking about this, like both from a hawk
It's
perspective,
really interesting.
because it's like her pet peeves are not my pet peeves. But then we both have these pet peeves that I feel so awful that Cass had to deal with both of our pet peeves like this whole time. And like this without using this hawk perspective, I don't think I would have seen that.
I think the collaboration on this project of producing this conference would have gone a lot differently had we done this activity 6 months ago.
First. Because I love deadlines and you do things, she does things right away. And I'm like, can't handle that, not doing it right away. I need a deadline so that it'll get done. And they're like, wow, no, just do it. And I'm like, no, I need a deadline. Like, so it's like, I identify with some of these that the Greeks mentioned. And I think you probably identify with most of them. But like, it's funny how you can be in between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there anything we didn't?
Oh, other ways.
How about ways we can improve our relationships?
Totally.
Or other ways other birds can improve relationships with me is to communication is huge for me. So like I said, if I'm a doer and I love crossing stuff off my list, when things are ambiguous or up in the air, or like, I don't know if people have done stuff yet and I have to wait for other people to get their stuff done before I can get my stuff done, I hate hanging in limbo like that. So anything other birds can do to kind of communicate where they are in the process, if they haven't finished it yet, or when they're going to finish it, or like giving me that kind of information is huge for me.
Yeah, because we actually had, so I, like last semester, my grandfather got sick. And so I basically disconnected because that's all the mental energy that I had was to like survive school, like my coursework and my job and Pop and my family. So the conference, like that was, I couldn't even like mentally process that. But these two felt like, what's going on? Like you're not communicating at all. So they were able to, once things calmed down, they were able to tell me that. And that's something that, okay, thank you. Like it was a safe time for me to hear that. And it's something that I worked on, and she's very empathic with the personal stuff. So that's just an example of like collaboration gone wrong or things that can go wrong, and kind of having that transparent communication. And even if you feel like you're failing, right, by letting them know, hey, I haven't done this yet because this is what's going on. And it's like really hard and I can't do it. Like that's really hard to say, but it's so much better to say it and be transparent about it as long as you have like a team you trust, because then all of these things aren't building up and she's not feeling like I can't do anything because you're not communicating, right. And she has a big contextual picture.
Yeah. So as a hawk, I'd much rather someone on the team say to me, oh, turns out I can't do that this week. Can somebody else do it? I'd be like, yes, I'll do it right away. Fine, no problem. I'd much rather somebody communicate that to me than it just be, I don't hear from them all week. I don't know what's going on with anything. And then,
right.
And then I end up having to do it anyway. So yeah, communication is huge.
And I think for ways that we can be more effective as, I can, yeah.
We're hawks, we're taking over.
No. Okay, yeah. So I want to say, you go stay here. I want to see if anybody has any comments. If you're not a hawk, and you have comments, questions, Kat, apparently you need an award, an vacation.
Oh, I know. Yes.
But anybody else? Go ahead, question.
It's not a question, a comment. Yeah, maybe. So I feel like I would like to have a hawk in my working team group work so that we can have a director to make things done. And but what is interesting that I feel like when Kari was talking about the conversation, you cut through or cut off others speaking when you find it is something you already know, or even just a chiming when you have a new idea based on the other's idea. So I'm thinking like what I would react in that situation. So I would never, or I feel uncomfortable chiming in when others don't finish. So I usually let others finish their sentence or idea, but sometimes when there are more than one hawks in the room, people chime in all the time. And I then lost my chance to speak up my idea. So one thing that, as I said, I would appreciate if others can give me that chance to speak up my idea and value my idea, but I also should learn to take the chance to take the advantage of speaking out whenever I have a chance. Yeah, so it is, you cannot always let others to invite you in. You should invite yourself in the conversation.
And I think that taking something like this would allow you the opportunity to construct some strategies or language or opportunities to do that where it does feel safer, right? So if it's something like, hey, can we pause because, things are going really quick and I had something to say, or just a word where it's like, oh, you know what? Like I have been taking over, didn't even notice until you said the word pause, and that's like a cue. But because you've done this, you have an understanding, you're in relationship with one another, you get how each other operate, like that could be something that I think would have been helpful for us, like, just a cue or something. Right, yeah,
And something that I know from the work that I do with managing conflict and facilitating groups is that anytime we all have styles. So this is just one style, but we have a lot of different styles, right? And we have behaviors. And when people know you they we all have expectations when we meet with this person, and how would they respond and what's going to happen. So when you change, people notice. So when it's really important to you, if you're not like these folks and it's really important to you, it won't take too much for you to disrupt this like a bunch of hawks. If you just, what you have to do, this is the best way I can describe it, is to get their attention is to do what they're doing. So for instance, if they're loud and they're talking over each other, you have to be just a little bit louder and do the exact same thing. So to interrupt and to go, hold on, I keep hearing the same thing. They will, and if you do it, somebody who doesn't typically do it, everyone will shut up. So use that when it's important to you, and what'll be great is you'll feel the power in that for yourself. Like, I have a voice, I can interrupt this. And then you'll be able to do it when you really want to do it. So you just have to try it. And especially if you're not like them, they will be floored.
Yeah. And I think I've experienced the opposite as well. Like, being a hawk, sometimes if I go into a meeting and at this point for me, it takes a real conscious effort to be like, I'm going to go in this meeting. I'm not going to cut anybody off. I'm going to be really like sit and quiet and nod and actively listen to everybody, what they're saying. And I'm going to, give them the attention they deserve and blah, blah, blah. And if I go in and do that in a meeting, people notice it as well.
Yes.
And they're like, oh.
Yes.
That's true.
Absolutely.
That's totally
Absolutely.
true.
So let me see, were there other questions or comments? Either in our room or.
Do we have any questions in the chat?
Or from Greece, more comments?
Okay.
I liked hearing from you. Because we still have to be here for one peacock, right, in Greece?
So let me ask before we move on though, then, I would like to ask, I have a question because I have a hawk. But I need to take you all out of the way you're thinking about this, and I need to ask the hawks this question. This is going to be, first of all, I'm so happy to have the opportunity to ask this question. So you just described somebody that I work with. Now, remember, I'm in an office of professional staff people, and we're service providers, right? So we go out and we facilitate, mediate, train, we do all kind of things. So I have a young woman who is a hawk, who has got a master's degree and had 2 years experience in our legislature. Okay. So our senators and our representatives, she's been down there for 2 years after her master's working in this very intense, fast-paced, high-powered, I mean, we're in Delaware, but they consider themselves high-powered people, right?
That's funny. Yeah.
Now, and she has experience as a hall director, residence life, taking care of students, and then she has experience down there. But she doesn't have experience being a mediator and a facilitator and a trainer in the work that we do, which, believe it or not, takes some time and skills and things like that. You have to learn stuff, and you don't necessarily get it in the academic world, right? So we bring her on to train her, but she's a hawk. So while you all were talking and counterparts in Greece were talking, I was hearing people in leadership positions, hawks in leadership positions. What do you do with a hawk who doesn't have the skills and the knowledge, but needs to go really fast with little information and just move forward? And also then doesn't like to do anything wrong. Please, I would have had to pay a lot of money to get the answers. And so thank you. I can't wait to hear.
I think that a lot of hawks, I think we are like the autodidacts. We can learn a lot on our own. We're the kind of people, I once had someone say to me, I could stick you in a closet with this textbook and you would come out knowing it, and like, that would be it, because we are such like, if that's our goal, we're going to do it. So I would just, if there's any written materials or any kind of online things that that person can do by themselves to do it at their own individual pace, I think would be huge for them, and not have to sit through these trainings that just go on and on and on. Oh my God, torture. So that's helpful for hawks, I think, to have things to go at their own pace.
Thank you.
And people like I think hawks are pretty self-aware and know when they don't know, but we try to get through it anyway sometimes. But just make sure that they know who the resources are to go to. If you have this question, come to me, and then be available not to launch into some huge lecture when someone asks you a question, but just to answer the question, say, do you need more, kind of thing.
I don't think hawks are self-aware necessarily.
Okay.
No, I think that they are self-aware of what they're aware of, you know, so, and how they're interpreting things. Because I'm just thinking about myself, like, growing up, because I think that I could have been, maybe I could see, like, flavors of myself in this person that you're describing growing up, because I think it's just, like, you're, hold on, we're trying to figure out, okay. Go ahead. Yeah, no, I think I could see myself in that, and I think you can just charge through stuff without really understanding, like perspective taking. If I had learned how to perspective take earlier, I think that it would have just enhanced my ability to do many things. Like, and I don't know how you go about doing that. Like, I think I learned that through actual, I know that perspective taking is not my default. Like a dove, you know, like that is where they're operating. They are continuously perspective taking. And that's something that I have to remind myself. So like mindfulness meditations have been helpful. Like actually like teaching children social emotional learning has been helpful because it literally took me through those skills. Yeah, took me through those skills.
So teaching other people the kind of things that they need to know.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah, and maybe not their colleagues. So that
Yeah.
probably drive them crazy.
Okay, we're gonna wrap up. Okay. So
This has been great.
just anything else we need to say, or you're just saying, just to wrap up?
Just
Do
to wrap
do
up
we
your session,
go to-
yeah. We
Go
gotta,
to Greece? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to Kat, Corey, Ginny for inviting me and for all the work that you put into this conference. It's really impressive. I want to thank the attendees who've been fabulous, who went above and beyond, did things that nobody expected to do when they showed up. And that's it for me.
okay, great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Kathy.